to my show. I'm Kathleen, your host. This is the Kathleen Wells Show. Regular listeners to my show know that I frequently have Dr. Frances Cress Wellesley on my show to talk about racism/white supremacy. And Dr. Wellesley learned many of her ideas, got many of her thoughts about this idea, this system of racism/white supremacy from my guest today, who is Neely Fuller. Neely Fuller has been a guest on my show before, but you know what? I need to have him on more frequently. Because I need KCAA listeners to get a better handle, grapple on this system of white supremacy, which I talk about frequently. In fact, Neely Fuller is the author of the United Independent Compensatory Code/System/ what is the slash? I forgot. Code/System. Neely, what is the other slash? Concept. He's the author of that. The United Independent Compensatory Code/System/Concept. In fact, Neely Fuller said back in 1971, and look where we are today, if you do not understand white supremacy/racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Neely Fuller said that in 1971. And look what's happening in relations between blacks and whites today. Look at Ferguson, Missouri. Look at our prison system. Do you think things have gotten better since 1971? Have things gotten better since the Civil Rights Movement? Do you believe that, despite having a black president? Well, welcome, Neely Fuller, to the Kathleen Wells Show.
Yes, thank you.
I'm delighted to have you. As I said, I should have you on more often, and I will begin to have you on more often, because one of the things that you mention in your book is that if we do not understand racism, everything else that we do or say is sort of like meaningless. I'm paraphrasing.
Yes, ma'am, that's my view. If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will confuse you. Now, why do I say that? I mean, if you understand how to fly an airplane or drive a car or walk down a street, you understand that. So how can you be confused by something called white supremacy? It's because the white supremacists, if you are a person of color, or a person classified as non-white, then you are dominated by those people, not all people, but those people who have decided that they are going to participate actively in the system of white supremacy as participants, as racists. They dominate everything that the non-white people do, either directly or indirectly, in every area of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. So, if a person doesn't know what is dominating him or her and motivating him or her to do whatever it is their ambitions are, if they don't know the origin of it and who is pulling all of the strings, not some of them, all of them, all the time, and they don't understand this, then they are going to be confused about why they're walking down the street, or flying an airplane, or driving a bus, or having a conversation, or looking for a job, or trying to get a house, or trying to maintain a house that they already have, or paying taxes. The world is going to be a strange place to that person, and that person, by anyone who is any organism, any creature that's in a strange situation, is going to be confused. And anyone who is confused, whether it's a person or a creature, is going to make a lot of mistakes, because that's what confusion brings on. And they're going to be angry a lot of the times without knowing why. And they're going to be breaking things and difficult to get along with. And a lot of things come from confusion. which is what those white people who believe in the system of white supremacy set out to do, to confuse their victims. Because just like any tiger or snake or any organism, any bird of prey that wants to go on the attack and dominate and mistreat, one of the first tactics that they use, one of the main tactics, is to spread confusion. The lions among wildebeest will come among them and set off confusion. Once they set off confusion, and everybody goes into a stampede, not knowing which direction to go or where they shouldn't go or what's going on, they just know that everybody's running, so they start running, don't know where they're running to or exactly understanding what they're running from, the little young ones limping along. Then the lion picks out the weakest and works itself right up to the strongest. But the first thing they like to set off is confusion. It's a military tactic. And it's the same way with people. You want to dominate people in an efficient manner, one thing you have to do without standing over them all the time with a gun or a knife or a stick is confuse their minds. And if you can do that in most or all of the areas of activity, then you have a very efficient operation. The system of white supremacy is a system that is very efficient. I don't know who thought it up, but it's the most efficient system for getting things done and for mistreating people and dominating people in the process, according to what I consider to be logic that was ever thought up. It's a very efficient system.
It's a very efficient system. So why don't we start with the definition first? Do you want to give our KCAA listeners a definition of white supremacy?
Well, white supremacy is racism. Now, some people will argue these points. In fact, they will argue the points with everything that I'm saying. But somebody thought up a system based on the old royalist system. Royalism means holier than thou, means I'm better than you. Why are you better than me? Well, that's just the way it is. And because I said so, that's why I'm better than you. Okay, so you're better than me. Now, what do we do next? Well, what we do next is that you let me tell you what to do, and you don't ever tell me anything. You can suggest to me what I should do, and I'll think about it, and if I want to do it, I will. But when I tell you something, it's not a suggestion, it's a demand, and you will obey the demands and commands that I make to you. That's the royalist system. Being born with the silver spoon in your mouth. Doesn't make any difference whether you're drunk or sober. You're royal. Doesn't have anything to do with whether or not you are well educated or not. You are royal. You are born royal. You are born better than everybody else. Mm-hmm. Even when you're not better than everybody else, you're still better than everybody else. Mm-hmm. That's the royalist idea. Mm-hmm. That a lot of people have resisted that idea, and a lot of people have embraced it. But a lot of people, down through the ages, have resisted the idea of royalism. That there are some people that are just born royal, and that's just no question about it. You can't say anything about it. Now, the idea of racism is based on the same basic principle. That's all it is. It's just a royalist system put on a what? On a color basis. Meaning, you point to a person, if you are classified or you have classified yourself as non-white, then you point out someone who is classified as non-white, if you are classified as white. And you say, oh, there's a person with color in his or her skin. Black, brown, red, yellow, beige, tan, color. Doesn't make any difference what color, as long as color, other than what we loosely call the color white, which in that context really isn't a color. It's color non-existent within that context that the white supremacists set up. But the person who is white will point out the person who is non-white. Yonder goes a person of color. That means that person can be mistreated by me. Who says so? Oh, the system says so. Because I am royal. You're royal why? Because I am white. And that person has color in his or her skin. I'm looking at them. And I'm going to get close and make sure that that person has color. If that person has black, brown, red, beige, tan, yellow, whatever, some classification that has color, that person is eligible automatically to be dominated and mistreated by me 24/7 in all areas of activity anytime I choose to mistreat that person. And no one is supposed to say anything about it. It's my choice and mine alone. That's what white supremacy is. Somebody thought of that idea and it took off and became the strongest and most powerful political and religious idea ever thought up in the history of the people of this planet. And it still is.
And still is. And you say racism is white supremacy. And so when we look in the Merriam-Webster dictionary under racism, they don't give that definition that you just gave.
They sure don't. That's why I wrote a textbook for victims of white supremacy where I change a lot of definitions so that they will do what? Reveal the truth.
So who wrote Merriam-Webster? Was a white supremacist?
From what I understand, the people who write dictionaries, period, are called lexicographers. Mm-hmm. Lexicographers are people who compile dictionaries. So I've been told. Now, how do they compile dictionaries? It's very simple. I didn't find this out until maybe I was around 20 years old, because they never told me this when I was going to school. I guess they just overlooked it. How are dictionaries put together? Lexicographers put together dictionaries. And how do they do this? By going around and listening to people talk. It's just that simple. And if they hear people using certain words the same way over and over and over again, that word will appear in the dictionary with the definition that the people who started using the words give to it. Mm-hmm. People who write dictionaries do not make up the definitions of the words. Maybe in ancient times they did. But they tell me in modern days, words appear in the dictionary simply by people going around and writing down what they hear people say. At one time, I thought it was sacrilegious for someone to use the word ain't. Mm-hmm. And I would tell people, because my 8th grade teacher told me, that word, that's not a real word. Don't use that word. That's improper English. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Don't use the word ain't. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then one day I looked in the dictionary and there it was. And I didn't get back to my teacher to ask why it was showing up in the dictionary. But then later on I found out about lexicographers. And lexicographers said, well, people are supposed to use the word aren't. But if enough of them over a period of time use the word ain't instead of aren't, it goes in the dictionary, whether you like it or not.
But how do they get the definition? In other words, they decide on the word based on what they're hearing from the masses of people or a group or a collective of people, and then how do they get the meaning? They get the same meaning
that the people give them.
From the collective of people.
Yes, from observing the way that people respond to the word is used.
Okay, so that means that the masses, the majority of people are using the word racism improperly.
Well, I say that it's being used completely out of the real context of the reality. Exactly. Because I always tell people, follow logic. Mm-hmm. Not just the words, follow the logic of the words and see if they correspond with what you're looking at in the real world. Mm-hmm. Regardless of how people use language, because people, I have found, use language all kinds of ways. Like black people, and I try to get them to stop doing it. They say, well, America mistreats black people. America has always treated black people. Ever since black people have been in the American system, they have been mistreated. And I say something is just the opposite. First of all, I say it's impossible. That's a real mouthful. When just about everybody will say, look at the history. And I say, history of what? They say the history of America. I say, how can something have a history that doesn't exist? See, now that's another mouthful. So now that comes down to what? Let's be systematic. Let's be logical. What exactly is America? That's what you start with. Because everything in the universe, if you're going to get clarity and focus, starts with a question, and every question has an answer. Every question has an answer, whether you know what the answer is or not. So the logical question, when people start using any word, is to ask, what does that word really mean?
And you know what? We're going to take a break. When we come back from the break, we're going to examine what does that word America mean? What does it mean to be an American? I'm speaking with Neely Fuller, who is the author of the United Independent Compensatory Code/System/Concept. That book is a compensatory counter-racist codified word guide. You got to get a handle of it. You got to get the book to read it to get a handle of white supremacy. We're talking to Neely Fuller. I'm Kathleen of the Kathleen Wells Show, and we'll be right back with Neely Fuller. Thanks. Welcome back to the Kathleen Wells Show. I'm your host, Kathleen Wells. My guest is Neely Fuller, who is the author of the United Independent Compensatory Code/System/Concept. And in addition to this book, he also has a textbook/workbook for thought, speech, and/or action for victims of racism/white supremacy. When we went to the break, we were just going to find out what is the meaning. What is the definition of America? Can you tell us, Mr. Fuller?
Yes. Well, the one, I have a compensatory definition. That's in the title of the book, the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. Why do I call it compensatory? It means making up for the definition that doesn't make sense. I mean, if you listen to people use words, let's get back to what lexicographers do. You hear people using the term America or Americans all over the place. If you really pay attention, they'll say America did this, America did that. Well, who is America? Where is America? When is America? I mean, that when can be important. Is a person an American all the time? When is that person an American? So these are the questions I would ask. First of all, ask myself. Ask myself so that I will be on the correct page. So I ask myself these questions. What is an American? When is a person an American? Well, when somebody says that he's American, somebody like whom? And what qualifies a person to be an American? Well, you get some papers saying that you will obey the Constitution, something like that. And then somebody else will say something else. Well, that's not all it is to it. There's more to it than that. There's such a thing as American culture. You say, okay, now we've gone from American to American culture. Are we getting anywhere with that? What is American culture? Well, it's a lot of things. A lot of things like what? Well, Americans are different. Different like when, what, and when? Do Americans kill people? They do, but they got good reasons. What reasons? Well, the right reason. Well, what's the right reason? See, and it goes on and on like that. And then some people will say, that mountain is an American mountain. Purple Mountain, Majesty, that's an American. And then they will say, there's an American eagle. Well, what makes that eagle an American? Does the eagle know anything about that? Have you had a conference with the eagle? Did the eagle make some papers or whatnot? Oh, well, no, don't be silly now. Well, wait a minute, silly? I'm asking a question. What does the eagle know about Americanism? Period. And then let's get back to the root. What is an American? How did that ego become an American? Come on, that's what you called it. You will say that some people are not Americans, but an ego can be an American. Come on. I mean, let's really get into it. Let's talk about this for the next 40 days and 40 nights. Just one word. We're going to get to the root of what this thing called American is, and Americans, and whether it can be a mountain, whether it can be a stream, whether it can be waves of grain. I heard a song once saying waves of grain. Well, they got waves of grain in the Ukraine. Is that American? And is it un-American to say that those waves of grain in the Ukraine must be Americans too because they're waves of grain? Oh, no. I mean, those are foreign. Well, what do the waves of grain know about that? And the people that plant it, what do the seeds look like? Is it any different? What does a tomato look like? That's an American tomato. Well, it's because it's grown in America. Well, wait a minute. What is America? When you start talking about tomatoes. So it just goes on and on and on. So I came up with a compensatory definition. I said, enough of this nonsense.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we do have a call from V. She says she's calling from planet Earth as a citizen of the world. Is she still on the line?
No, she's no longer on the line.
Oh, she hung up. Anyway, she had a question. She's written a question on my Facebook page, and it is, given that whites are on the front line promoting racism, and clearly racism is most beneficial to them, but why should we assume that it is whites and only white people who are behind the science of racism?
And that was a question?
Mm-hmm.
The question was,
why do we assume that it is only white people who are behind this science, or rather system of racism?
Because it's just one system of racism, and that's white supremacy. According to whom? According to logic. And according to logic, according to whom? According to what Neely Fuller has written. And Neely Fuller is either lying or telling the truth.
Okay, so give me some of the logic that there's only one. Give me some of the examples of the logic that there's only one system of racism.
Because they're the most successful people. There are people who aspire to be racist, I'm sure. There are black people who go around and say, I believe in black supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
So the logical question now is, since everything is about questions and answers, I would immediately ask that black person, where's your proof? Now, you said you believe in white supremacy. Where's your proof?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I just said it. Wait a minute. Saying it doesn't prove anything. You can say you're an airplane pilot, all right? I want to see you flying some planes, all right? Now, where's your proof that you are what you say you are? You say you're a black supremacist. Now, first of all, I want to know what that means. Well, I tell white people what to do, and they can't tell me nothing. Oh, now we're getting somewhere. Where's your proof? Now, let's go back to the central question. Where is your proof, Mr. Black Person? Well, I'm the supervisor on my job. Oh, okay. Now we're getting somewhere. Who's your supervisor? Who is your ultimate supervisor in a system of white supremacy? Because that's the only system of government on the planet. There is no other government. Well, now, according to whom? According to the evidence. Take a look. Walk around the planet. Take a walk around the park and see who really tells people of color what to do.
Okay,
it's
so that's
always somebody white.
Okay, so that brings us back to people who will say Barack Obama is black and the president of the United States. Your response?
Yes, and many black people say that. And I say President Obama has a name and a title. President means preside. Now, presiding over what? Over what he's told to do. That's what. By whom? Indirectly, by the white supremacists. Now, that doesn't mean every white person that comes and leans over his shoulder at the desk tells him what to do. But it means that somewhere on this planet, there are some white people who believe in white supremacy who tell them what to do. Otherwise, white supremacy does not exist. President Obama comes under the dictates of the white supremacists. Who are they? Might be anybody. That's just it. That's a part of the problem. There are people that you pass on the street every day, but you don't know who they are, because there is no master list of who is a white supremacist and who is not, as far as I know. Now, if there is a master list, then somebody needs to show me that, because I really need that.
Because it would be an addendum in your book, wouldn't it, the list? You'd include the list, wouldn't you, in your book?
Oh, no, it wouldn't just be in my book. That would be world knowledge. That would be on all the internets. That would be on every wall. I mean, all the people's names.
Yeah.
I mean, but I've never known anybody who even tried to compile a list of who the real white supremacists are.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And will they step forward? Because
Mm-hmm.
one thing, no victim of racism can prove the existence of racism. That's another thing, which also proves that there must be a system of white supremacy just on that alone. If you're a black person, you cannot prove the existence of racism, because you have to prove it to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And that somebody has to be white.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, everything that you're saying, everything that I'm saying, is non-existent. That proves the existence of white supremacy right there.
Exactly.
I'm a victim of white supremacy, but I cannot prove it.
Exactly. That's what I say. I always say, the blacks are not self-actualized. In other words, they have to prove it to someone. And who do they have to? They don't have to prove it to another black person. They have to prove it to a white person.
Yeah, these are just black people, arguing among themselves at the bottom of the slave ship.
Right, exactly.
All right?
Exactly.
And so they get into a great big fight like black people usually do. Among themselves. But then the master comes down the ladder on the slave ship and say, that's enough of this foolishness.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody stops.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you know white supremacy when you see it. Black people can act up any kind of way when they're among themselves, and we do. We act out all kinds of ways, most of it destructive. Massive destruction. The white supremacists show up on the scene, and all of a sudden everybody comes like a little lamb. Everybody who's fighting suddenly gets quiet. Y'all better be quiet. Master's here.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Y'all better shut up.
We're speaking with
See, we know who Daddy is, and we know who Mama is. We know.
We know.
But particularly black males, we like to pretend. But we're the phoniest people in the world. And yet we talk about keeping it real more than anybody on the planet.
Why do you say that? Elaborate on that thought.
Because we want to believe things that are not so, and this is why we never get any better off than we are. Because the first thing you have to tell yourself, we understand it, is the truth. We do that when it comes to sports, because black people, for the most part, like all kinds of sports all over the world, soccer, football. And black people, when we're on the football field, we'll tell ourselves the truth. We'll say, I really messed up on that last down. I got to do better than this. They'll tell themselves that. Each individual football player will tell himself that. He fumbled the ball 5 times in a row. Everybody looking at you. You couldn't hide it. And even if somebody cuts him some slack, he probably won't cut himself some slack if he considers himself a real professional. He'll say, oh, yeah, the people said it wasn't really my fault and all like that. I got a bad leg and all like that. But I ain't leaning on that. I fumbled the ball 5 times in a row. I almost made a turnover 3 of those times. And so I got to do better. Now, we'll tell ourselves the truth when it comes to sports. Get off that sports field, we'll start lying about everything, particularly about where we stand in the world and why we stand there and the kind of things that we value. We won't tell the truth about that. The things that are important to us, we will not tell the truth about that. We'll make up stuff when the mic is there, when we know better.
Give me an example. Give me an example of how black men make stuff up.
Oh, black men, first of all, the biggest thing they make up is that they're men. You can't be a man and be subject to white supremacy. It's totally impossible. It can't be done by anybody. I don't care how much they know, how much they flex their muscles and go around with no shirt on, and how many tattoos they got, how many ropes they can skip, how many dreads they can put in their hair. That doesn't make you a man. Nowhere close. Walking down the sidewalk, taking up all the sidewalk, making everybody else get off the sidewalk, including white people, when there are other white people around who don't want to be, who are not willing to be bothered with you, and they're just trying to get out of your way so they can go on their way and run the rest of the world and run you too, even though you don't know it. But these are ways. That manhood thing, it's impossible for a black male to be a man in the system of white supremacy. That's a contradiction.
It's impossible for a black man to be a man in a system of white supremacy. We're speaking with Neely Fuller, the author of the United Independent Compensatory Code/System/Concept. This is the Kathleen Wells Show. And when we come back from the break, I'm going to ask you some specifics about what's going on with police brutality, specifically what's going on in Ferguson, Missouri. We're speaking with Neely Fuller, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Kathleen Wells Show. I'm your host, Kathleen, and I'm speaking with my guest, Neely Fuller, who is the author of the United Independent Compensatory Code/System/Concept. I also want to mention that my show is re-aired on Sunday evenings at 8 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time on the Progressive Voices channel. So this interview will be re-aired on the Progressive Voices channel. You can go to progressivevoices.com on Sunday at 8 p.m. Pacific Time, and you will hear this show re-aired. You're going to want to hear it again because Neely Fuller is saying things that we rarely hear. In fact, we never hear in the mainstream media. And yet the same things keep happening in the black community. It's like we're on a merry-go-round. The same things, police brutality, continually happens. And what Neely Fuller has just told us is that there is no way that a black man can be a man in a system of white supremacy. So, Mr. Fuller, please elaborate on what's going on with this issue of police brutality in the black community.
Well, the whole system is brutal. The system of racism is about brutality. I mean, and black people, particularly black males and some a growing number of black females, try to act out like they got the kind of muscle that the white supremacists have. And it's always shameful just how quickly that falls apart. Black people think they know something about violence when they are being violent to each other. And within that context, we do. We are very violent when it comes to each other. All kinds of gangs just looking for each other. For what reason? All because you look like me. But there's something different about you because you live on the other side of the tracks. You don't live in my part of the hood. So I'm going to come over there and kill you. And you should be trying to come over here and kill me. And that's what I call living. That's what life is all about. And the white supremacists look at it and say, look at them. Look at them. Look what we have made out of this trash. We have taken trash and made more trash. There's nothing to them. We can do anything with them. They do not have minds. They're walking around, strutting around, calling themselves men, trying to impress the black females by beating them up every other night and roaring. They think because they got heavy voices and that they can talk loud and shout loud over a microphone and jump up and down on the stage, that they're some kind of match for me. They don't even know what a match is. They don't know anything. They're just what the gentleman in The Godfather 1 said that they are, a bunch of animals, and real cheap animals at that. They don't even have the sense of animals. Just take a look at them. Take a look at them. All of them. And then say to yourself, if someone came here from another planet, would they want to use any of this mess as an example of a culture that needs to be followed? I don't think so. And they'd be correct, truth be told. Now, are the white supremacists examples? No. Why? Because they're white supremacists. They believe in mistreating people based on color. Now, how absurd is that? But they have pulled it off. They have become the most powerful people that the planet has ever seen by pulling off that one thing. They don't have to pull off nothing else. That's huge. There are a lot of non-white people on this planet. And when you can snap your finger and have them all hopping, have them all killing each other, that's a pretty big accomplishment. Having black males calling themselves men just because they can make a lot of babies, and then the females that they make babies by, after, as soon as they get out of the bed, call them bitches and whores, and then kick them, and then run down the street, beating on their chests like they are black Tarzans, bragging on themselves about, now I'm a man. We don't have the vaguest idea of what a man looks like.
Well, what is the definition of a man?
Manager. Can manage his and everybody else's affairs if you are a superman, meaning you have a superior mind, a superior agenda, because that's really what makes one person supreme over another. First of all, you have a vision that's greater than anybody else's. If it's 10 people on the planet, the person who has the greater vision, who has the biggest plan, will be the most powerful person out of those 10 people. That's logic. See, black people are not logical. We are a bundle of emotions, and the white supremacists know that. We are motivated by how we feel from one minute to the next. Truth be told. And feelings are unreliable. Feelings do serve a purpose, but feelings are supposed to lead a person to logic, or an animal for that matter. A cat has feelings, but a cat has to use logic. A cat will sit back and look. If you ever watch a cat, it will just look. It will look one way, then look another way, then look straight ahead. If a cat sees a person coming toward itself, it will look at that person and size the person up and try to get some type of idea about what the person is up to. I mean, it'll just sit there. And when it makes a move based on logic. It might just suddenly jump up and get on top of the fence because all of a sudden they can sense that there might be some danger. Or they just might say, well, doesn't look like the person's going to really do anything. It looks like they're coming to empty the trash cans, so I'll just get out of the way of the trash cans and let them empty the trash cans. That's what the old folks used to call cat sense. Black people have lost the sense of cat sense. We don't study anything except each other.
Okay, but my question for you, Mr. Fuller, is have we lost that sense because we have been subjugated under white supremacy? In other words, we are reacting.
Absolutely, we have lost it. But just because you lose something doesn't say that you can't find it.
Mm-hmm.
So all you have to do is just go back. I always tell people, don't follow people. Don't follow Neely Fuller, for sure. You know, he's a black male in the system of white supremacy. Follow what came with the universe. Logic. Cause and effect. Fire will burn. Water is wet. That's logic. Pay attention to the logic of the universe. The moon comes up a certain way. It moves around in the sky a certain way. The sun stays still for a reason and lets things gyrate around it. This is logic. And this is why we have seasons. The leaves fall off the trees, and then they come back again. Fresh leaves, new leaves. And the old leaves go under the ground and nourish the soil. This is a logical process. All logic, all mathematics. The white supremacists, when they go among non-white people, first thing they do to start their confusion, because this is where their power comes from, They start doing things that make no sense at all, but they're doing it among dark-skinned people. And get the dark-skinned people to jump on board like we usually do. You know, they start putting all kind of poison on their skin called tattoos, and we take a look at it with our bugged eyes and say, me too. And we would go out and do it. Males and females, just lining up. Well, you ask them, logically, what is this supposed to do? I mean, your foreparents were tattooed. They call it branding. So what are you doing? Are you thinking about what you're doing? Well, thinking. I ain't got no time to think. I believe in acting. You know, I believe in moving. I believe in, going down the street, turning around, turning flips, all like that. I'm a body person. I'm not a mind person. Let somebody else do the thinking. Well, the white supremacists took a look at that and said, oh, you're turning all the thinking over to me. Yeah, I ain't got time to do no thinking. Life is too short. Well, mister, well, Negro, I will definitely do some thinking, and I'll think about what your future is going to look like, because I am going to map it out while you're sleeping at night. I will burn midnight oil, and when you get up in the morning, I will have a plan for you like you wouldn't believe, but you don't have a plan for me. And that's what we need to start doing, making plans for ourselves in the form of a code. And like I was mentioning, like manhood, I talked about that on an earlier program today, and that is first order of business when it comes to the black female. First time, last time. I think I said this before on this program. I've certainly said it on many others. What do I mean by first time, last time? First time he hits you, that's the last time. Because I don't mean you come back at him and hit him and all like that. That's an announcement. You accept that announcement seriously. That should be a part of the black code as of this minute, worldwide. First time a black male strikes a black female, that is an announcement. What kind of announcement? This arrangement, because you can't call it a relationship, this arrangement is over.
Well, it makes me...
This arrangement is over, and it's over forever.
But,
don't contact me for any reason.
But that makes
That's what that's supposed to mean.
The black football player who struck the black woman, his wife now, she's his wife now, in the elevator, dragged her out of the elevator. And I think, she didn't... If she left, what would have been her other opportunities?
Other opportunities is, hey, he's dead. That's the way you're supposed to look at him. He died last week. What would you do if he was dead? That's the way it's supposed to be. See, this nonsense has got to stop. We can't keep talking about problems and never come up with a solution to anything. That's the solution. First time, last time. And some females who have heard me say that over the years, and they were reluctant. I mean, they say, oh, well, I mean, it's a lot of things got to be considered other than that. And I say, no, you don't consider nothing. That's an announcement that this person is not supposed to be with you under any circumstance, ever, from that point on. And so a few females said they tried it, and they called me years later, and they said they always let that male know when they first meet him that if you ever hit me, that's an announcement that it's over. No point in calling, and saying you're sorry. No point in calling when we can work something out. Don't ever call me for anything. Don't ever call me for anything, period. And don't even contact somebody to have them contact me. You no longer exist, mister. You just announced that you no longer exist by striking me. It's something that's never supposed to happen. A black male is never, except in direct self-defense, like she comes at you and you're sitting there at the kitchen table reading the paper and she swings an axe at your head, then that's self-defense. I'm talking about a willful and deliberate hit based on you didn't do what I said do, or you was out with some man last night. Oh, and that's serious business and all like that. But that's not the way to handle it. That black male is supposed to say, oh, what you just did, you just announced that we are incompatible, that I'm the wrong person for you, and you're the wrong person for me. And even if I want to hit you, that means that you're the incorrect person. That's a signal to the black male. If he himself says, you know, I almost hit you right then when you did that. So now that's an announcement. I'm not supposed to ever want to hit you. I went looking for you. That's why we're together. But now I want to hit you. It means we have no business together. Because that next time I might act on what I want to do. And that's against the code. That's against the black code worldwide. We don't hit females, period.
Right, but first of all, we have to go back to the fact that they're not men. We're dealing with boys. We're dealing with males, not men.
Wait a minute, I got to say it. Boys, and I'm one of them, have to grow up. Otherwise, we will never get out of this shape, and we cannot keep making excuses. Because that's what both black males and black females want to keep doing forever. Make an excuse for everything. And then, having made the excuse, in the next 15 minutes, crying about our condition. Mm-hmm. Why? Because we're not willing to change. Black culture is not worth 5 cents.
Okay, black culture
nobody's
isn't worth
market.
5 cents. My guest, I hear the music. I'm going to have you back on, Neely Fuller, and we're going to explore black relationships, the black man, black woman. We're talking with Neely Fuller, the author of the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. Thank you, Mr. Fuller, for being a guest on the show.
All right. Thank you for inviting me.
I'll have you on again soon because I want to explore the relationship between black women and men.
And if people want to disagree, they can say so and give their reasons.
Oh, sounds good to me. Thank you, Mr. Fuller.
Yes,
This is the Kathleen Wells Show. I'll see you next week. Thanks. Bye.